Hey guys, history behind the warrior, and today I'm going to be talking about one of the biggest names in fighting game history, and that's Ryu. As a very young child, Ryu was orphaned and left with no memory of his previous family. Whether or not they still exist is unknown to him. The young Ryu would be found by a man named Goken, who would adopt Ryu and take him to a secluded dojo and teach him in the ways of his martial arts. Through Goken's teachings, Ryu became a silent and very humble young man. Shortly after Ryu's arrival at the dojo, Goken would be approached by a very close friend of his. His friend's request was to teach his son Ken Masters, as he didn't want the boy to grow up and become a spoiled brat and live off the family fortune. Goken was rather hesitant at first, but accepted Ken into his dojo. This had benefited Ken and Ryu, as Ryu did not have a friend around his age, and Ken was not yet disciplined. When Ken and Ryu initially met, they did not get along well, but over time and training with each other, the two became like brothers, with Ryu also seeing Goken as his father. Goken would train the two boys up to the age of 23 years old. Goken then believed that Ryu was ready to travel the world in order to test and hone his martial arts skills against the best fighters in the world. With his adoptive father's blessing, Ryu would leave the dojo and head towards the first World Warrior Tournament. When Ryu participated in the World Warrior Tournament, he defeated all challengers, and this earned him the right to fight its host, Sagat. During the battle, Ryu was knocked into unconsciousness by the host. Thinking that he has won, Sagat drops his guard and tries to help Ryu up. As Ryu was getting to his feet, he would unknowingly tap into the Satsue no Hado, the darker side of his martial art that depends on bloodlust, and he would strike Sagat with a dangerous Metsu Shoryuken, knocking out the host. Due to the power that was created from the Satsue no Hado, he would scar Sagat across the chest, with Sagat now swearing vengeance against Ryu. After Sagat's defeat, Ryu would return home to the dojo to ask Goken about what had happened and the power he had tapped into. When Ryu returned to the dojo, he found Goken dead. Ryu was able to track down his killer, the killer being a man named Akuma, who was actually Goken's brother. Ryu would eventually track down this man on his own secluded island and battle him. Ryu was able to defeat Akuma, but we learned that Akuma was testing him the whole time, and sensing that Ryu has the same power that he does. Akuma then proceeds to tell the truth about the martial art he learned as a child, and that it derived from another martial art known as Satsue no Hado, a power that consumes the practitioner of a certain fighting style, driving them to win even with the intention of killing the opponent. Ryu is initially shocked, but before he can ask more questions, Akuma uses one punch to smash the entire island. Sometime after escaping the island, Ryu would have a friendly sparring match with Ken, and lose. Ken would realize that Ryu is not himself, and he's been different since his victory over Sagat. Ken would give Ryu his signature red hairband, as a reminder to stay focused, with Ryu thanking his brother. Not long after this, a very young fan named Sakura would come up to him and express her desire to train under him. Ryu would reply that he's still learning much about himself and his martial art, but allow Sakura to take a picture of him for now. Sometime later, Ryu is found by Sagat, who is out for a grudge match. Ryu protests that Sagat has not yet fully recovered from his injuries, but Sagat persists. Sagat is able to defeat Ryu, but it's only later that upon reflection, he realizes that Ryu held back the entire fight, and wishes to fight Ryu once more. 2 years later, Ryu continues to be troubled by what Akuma has told him, compounded by his encounter with Rose, who tells him about Shadow Lu and their leader, M. Bison. Rose tells Ryu that he cannot fight Bison, unless he is willing to put his body and his soul on the line. Much to what was expected, when Ryu confronts Bison, he is defeated, despite putting up a valiant battle. Bison then takes the semi-conscious Ryu and begins brainwashing him, believing that the Satsue no Hado is secretly the akin to Bison's own psycho power. Bison's brainwashing is interrupted when they are confronted by Sagat, Ken, and Sakura. A fight breaks out, with Ken and Sakura distracting Bison, allowing Sagat to have the time he needs to fight the brainwashed Ryu. Sagat would urge Ryu to remember who he was and where he came from, Because of the memories, Ryu is able to break the hold that Bison has on him. Ryu then confronts the Shadowloo leader and defeats M. Bison, temporarily destroying him. Ryu would also participate in the second World Warrior tournament, entering to test his skills and defeating many of his opponents. During the tournament, he encourages Ken to participate in it. It is unknown how far Ryu himself progressed in the tournament, but in a kind of ironic twist, it is implied that he may have lost to Ken. Not long after the second World Warrior tournament, Ryu would participate in another tournament to help master his skills, and to gain another match against his best friend and kind of rival, Ken. During his journey, he meets up with Sakura, whom he encourages to train much harder. Not long after this, Ryu would meet up with Sagat, and the two would finally have their rematch, with Ryu defeating Sagat. Ryu would go on to defeat Seth, the host of the tournament, and defeat him in his Sin headquarters. After this, Ryu was forced to tap into the Satsue no Hado once more, in order to destroy a weapon of mass destruction developed by Sin that harnessed the energy in the human body. Ryu would then unleash an extremely powerful Shoryuken on the machine, destroying it. Later, Ryu comes across his old master and adopted father Goken, who in fact survived his last battle with Akuma. Although it seemed like he was killed by Akuma's raging demon, Goken had in fact emptied his soul using a technique called the Power of Nothingness. Goken then uses the Power of Nothingness to seal away the Satsue no Hado, which is eating away at Ryu, knocking him unconscious. During this time, Akuma would arrive and challenge his brother for one last battle to the death, saying that the winner would claim Ryu and choose his fate. The outcome of the battle was left unknown, but since Ryu is free of the Dark Hado's influence, it is very strongly believed that either Goken won or the battle ended in a draw. Later, Ryu and Ken chase their long-lost master alongside a cliff face, with Ken wanting Goken to stick around a while longer, whilst Ryu wishes him well. It is believed after Goken has cleansed Ryu of the Dark Hado, that he has taught Ryu the Shin Shoryuken and the Denjin Haiduken. Many years later, Ryu participates in the third World Warrior tournament to further advance his fighting capabilities. His most notable fight during the tournament is against a man named Hugo, who is managed by poison. During their bout, Hugo is able to withstand the Shin Shoryuken and hold his own, but in the end, Hugo is defeated by Ryu. It is unknown what happens to Ryu during the third tournament, as he more or less fades into the background. It is never stated that he is defeated by anyone, but the only two notable fights he does have is against Hugo and Oro. Unlike the previous tournaments, Alex is actually the victor of this tournament. It is revealed shortly after the end of the tournament that Ryu meets up with Ken for a friendly match, in which he is able to defeat his brother. At some point later, he also encounters Alex, the winner of the third World Warrior tournament. The two battle each other, with Ryu defeating him. Ryu then helps the young man to his feet, and encourages the young wrestler to continue honing his abilities against stronger opponents. Inspired by Ryu's skill and determination to become stronger, Alex soon sets out to find Ryu for a rematch. Now, since we're talking about Ryu, there's no way we can avoid talking about his counterpart, Evil Ryu. Now, Evil Ryu is more or less a what-if character, so if Ryu was to accept the Satsue no Hado, I guess this would be kind of how powerful he would be. Now obviously, the kind of Evil Ryu thing has turned up here and there in certain arcs of the story, but he's never been his own official character. With the Satsue no Hado now being sealed away, it is unknown whether or not that side of Ryu will ever come out, but it is a little bit teased in the Street Fighter V opening cinematic. As a lover of Evil Ryu and someone who actually mains Evil Ryu, I really do hope that this character does return, even if he is a what-if character, because I think many people would enjoy to play as him. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is my first Street Fighter video. If I've got any terminology wrong, please let me know so that way I can fix the mistakes in the future when I make more of these videos. Now this year I wanted to change things up, so next week you're going to get this character from the Tekkenverse. I decided to start off with Heihachi Mishima. The reason I decided to do this was because he has been in every Tekken game, and every Tekken game has been more or less built up around the wars between the Mishimas. Now since Tekken 7 Fated Retribution is going to be once again based around the Mishimas, it seems only fair that I go over them. As you guys know, I'm very open to talking about certain characters, so put in the comments below who you'd like to see. Anyway guys, as always, please comment, like, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know, and I will see you guys next time.